I think the first idea for this show was just that I wanted to turn part of the museum into my studio, probably because I didn't know what I wanted to make. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be in the museum, you know, clocking in for 8 hours a day for a month, I'm going to need more than one kind of an activity in here. I'm not just going to be wanting to make one thing. So it sort of boiled down to the idea of doing a 2-dimensional and a 3-dimensional project simultaneously. And then wanting the two to have a relationship is when I thought I should just make a 3-dimensional form out of this 2-dimensional image that I love so much. There it is. Nice red, isn't it? Woo! So excited. Yeah, this is where things start to get very messy. Okay. So I'm gonna just take this and this and this. We're gonna go over there. So I'm just gonna put a little out now. And I'm trying to get a nice thin and even coat of ink on the brayer so that it doesn't clog the wood grain too much, but puts just a nice even coat all across the surface. The quality of the material in the print, you see it especially clearly on this little one because the scale of the wood grain and the scale of the marks together. But like I was saying, all these sort of incidental, like where the wood chips away, and here where we lost it a little bit and where it chips on the ends, I love all of that as part of the print in the end. There's something about printmaking where you're forced into a slightly more ambiguous relationship with what you're doing. It's not like total control. And I think I'm drawn to situations where I assert one thing, but then where I am or the material or whatever else it is asserting a separate narrative, and you have to find a way to mediate between the two. So what we're going to do is start the paper like on the grid of the floor.
You want to tape it, or do you just
wait it? That's kind of a good idea. Well, I think we should wait until we know it's running straight. Let's just move it a little. Oop, already wanted to stick. There we go. Good. Okay. I'm deliberately trying to get the grain of the wood going in a few different directions. I don't know if that's going to be a detail that comes out in the final print, but I love the idea of the grain kind of shifting across the image. And the seams of the wood, I think, are going to be a beautiful part of the image too.
So you did this big potato print. Well, this is going to be pretty much stuck here.
Yes,
so
this is
go
really
down for
a regular one. I was realizing that there's something about the relationship to the material, like in making a woodcut, that's similar to what I love about the human scale in relationship to the landscape here in the Southwest, because it's that way in which you're diminished in size and you have to sort of accept and embrace the sort of natural world or your smallness on the planet, basically. And similarly, when you're drawing and struggling with a different material in order to make a mark, you're put, I think, in a better balance of control and lack of control in relation to what you're doing. I was just thinking that this morning as I was cutting the block, how much of a similarity there is to me in terms of my satisfaction of drawing this way and then living in a place like this. So
When you think about the origin of patterning, you think about kind of human observation, I would say mostly and by and large of the natural world. And then you take that sort of accumulation of input and you reduce it and order it. You sort of turn it into a human icon. In that reduction, you can create something kind of that symbolizes that whole, like if you think of a funnel, that sort of breadth of information funneling down to a single idea. It hangs from about there to there, and it'll just hang to face that, but I think coming out a little bit from the wall will be good. This image of that sort of firework flower, I feel like is one of those sort of reductive pattern icon pieces. Like I could see it as much, almost like a folk art motif, where it's been boiled down for a long time and now it's reduced to something very simple that you could imagine just being purely decorative. But there's something about it that keeps relating outward too. And then there's the other aspect of it, which is simply that it coalesces as a perfect circle, but it's composed of a little bit of variety. So though it is a simplified, almost like iconic reduction of something that you see in the world, it has a lot of vitality to it. And that's the human intervention. So I'm sort of interested in that. But in this project, what I really wanted to do was to try to convert that flat, two-dimensional, very simple, almost folk art motif into a three-dimensional rendering. This was the prototype that I made first, trying to think about how to construct this whole bigger one, and I'm just going to turn it on. This one sinks. Isn't that satisfying? So what I'm doing is I'm making a similar form, so it has kind of a beach ball center with arms off of each wedge of the beach ball, and except this one only has 3 arms on every wedge, and the one I'm making will have 10. And then the arms are basically 10 feet long. And the beach ball will be located, the center will be located up near the ceiling. So the arms will sort of go straight down, maybe touch the floor, maybe almost touch the floor. And then when it fills with air, they'll come out, this is my hope, and almost like tickle the walls as they rise. So the first iteration was the show in Roswell, which was really about just the process of making a piece, which all along in my mind I imagined the Suyama Space for. I made the arms so long in Roswell that they wouldn't lift, and the material just, it was like a balance between gravity and airflow and things like that. So I ended up rebuilding the whole thing, adding twice as many arms, enlarging the central sphere that all the arms attach to, so that the arms would be able to sort of mechanically operate the way I was hoping they would. There's a certain kind of confidence that I gained from the first iteration that regardless of my, let's say, relative control in the process of this one, compared with the last one, that there would be still that fresh feeling of surprise. And I do feel that about it. When I see this one inflate, I'm still just so delighted. It's like such a rush to see it reach its full shape.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
But it's again that sort of emotional feeling that I so wanted to capture with this that could only be achieved by seeing it reach its full height. So the mechanics of it indeed were very important, because as I see this version of it, it's like a completely different world. So in Roswell, both the inflatable and the print basically rested on the ground because of the low height of the ceiling. And it had a kind of beauty of its own that it did that, very grounded, and both of them, and that they both did that. And the inflatable here at Suyama, it meets the ground when it's deflated, but then it lifts off. And the print itself is hung with a little maybe 3 or 4 inch gap. So the fact that they're both airborne gives the show a really different quality. I was just thinking, how can you insert something that's basically just a 2-part, very simple conversation into a space that scale? And so certainly the size of everything that I was working on was absolutely with Suyama Space in mind.
Gosh, I mean, it was big in Roswell, but because it was on the floor partly, you just didn't feel its bigness the same way.